A good old worm is a classic. Of course, a hook will be helpful for catching them. This fishing method is not just for kids and rookies, it's a staple method for a reason. Today we're going to discuss my fourth favorite method for catching common sunfishes, live bait. And we will mention some scent baits too. What's up everyone, I am Koaw and this is KNFS, where we anglers are always learning and sharing knowledge about fishing and fishes, and I know a lot of you have been waiting for this series to finish. Me too. I've had a busy summer. I recently got a new job at a university's fisheries department here in the Midwest, and so although I deal with fish every day and I've been angling in my free time, I just haven't had time to produce videos, but I will get better with my time management and video making as we move along into fall. I'm on vacation right now in Wisconsin. Fishing trip, of course, but I'm still getting this out to you. And I'm sure you've been catching a lot of fish this summer too, but let's get into this. Yes, a worm and a hook. This is one of the absolute best methods for catching any of the common sunfishes because it's effective and it's easy. This isn't just a method that I train kids on and even adults learning to fish. It's a method that I will use if I want the highest percentage chance of catching fish in most situations. Live bait for most all predatory fishes will almost always be the most effective method versus artificial baits. Hundreds of millions of years of evolution have these fishes instinctually more drawn to a live, moving, wriggling creature with those natural odors than compared to an artificial one. And you recognize real from fake all the time. If I put some real food in front of you and then some fake food, you're probably gonna know which is which, or at least you'll have a better preference after tasting it or putting it in your mouth. There are many live bait options, but worms are the easiest to get, they're easy to dig up, and they're cheap to buy. I prefer hardy red worms because they're tough and they stay on the hook longer, some bloodworms too. Some bait shops will sell these, and there are even some types of worms like these red worms that don't even need to be kept refrigerated, which is very convenient. Night crawlers are nice, but often they're a bit too big for our common sunfishes. So for any of the worms, make sure you bring some scissors because cutting the worms might be necessary. Tearing them with your hands is just not a good idea because it increases the chance that you'll mush them up, soften the worm, kill it. A flabby, lifeless worm will not work as well as a live, wriggling one. So it's very important to remember that your hook size corresponds to the type and size of the species, the type of fish you're going after. And some of you probably already know that I have made an entire video on these hook sizes, as well as a free printable chart and a downloadable image that you can just save on your smartphone. You just find that at my site, and I'm putting the link to that right there, and it'll be in the description. So these are hook sizes for all the species and what sizes you want to get. So having a worm dangling far off of your hook is a bad idea. We're talking size of your bait here. Most of the common sunfishes will grab the end of that worm and then rip it off your hook. So that means you're just going to keep losing your bait. Only really the green sunfish and warmouth have mouths big enough to suck in a sloppy presentation like this. So keep it tight. The worm needs to trail off the hook just far enough to where there's a wiggling end, but short enough so the barb of the hook can also be sucked into the mouth when that end of the worm is grabbed. Now leeches are an amazing option for common sunfishes. They're tough and they stay on the hook really well. And I mentioned this in another video, but larger hooks with bigger leeches won't hook common sunfishes well. So knock that hook size down to the appropriate level and you'll be slaying them. Smaller leeches are a great choice, and you can harvest these, which is a little tricky. You gotta look up methods for that. But you can buy them in bait shops, and typically these are seasonal to buy and even harvest. So crawdads are also a great bait. They're easy to find on the shoreline. Little juveniles are great if you hook them through the tail. However, I don't often use crawdads because they're really difficult to ID. I'm a biologist and I even have a hard time IDing them. And I don't want to be using a protected species. So you run that risk if you're catching wild ones. Minnows and other fishes are also great. Again, you can purchase these at bait shops. Some bait shops won't even sell that small. But you can also just collect them via your own legal methods like minnow traps, etc. There are plenty of live insect options for live bait, but unfortunately many just come off the hook a little bit too easy. Waxworms are a great option though, especially in winter for ice fishing. So now let's just talk about another option similar to live bait but not live bait. That's just sort of scent baits. because I know some people that refuse to use live bait either for moral reasons or they're simply just grossed out by touching a leech or a worm and putting it on a hook, and that's totally fine. So I've mentioned this bait in my other videos, and it remains a staple in my box, and that is fake leeches. These artificial scent baits are fabulous. They stink, they got a great wiggle. You can't really go wrong with most of these other scent baits that also give off a nice natural wiggle. Like Red Fireworm by Berkeley. I just found these are just wonderful. One package lasts a long time. I just cut it to the size I want, and they sort of look like chironomid larvae. So these slender scent baits also work well for the really small lepomids and other sunfishes from the family. Like the Euro larva, I just had a great time, especially when I made that movie, The 13, with these guys. You just pop a little itty bit on the hook and just wiggle it tight in a spot for a minute or so. Just find holes and twitch. You'll try to mimic a buzzing insect or an undulating worm that is sinking. Power baits are fun. I put them on drift sometimes for panfish while I'm doing some other fishing. It just leaves a nice scent trail, and typically you'll be bringing them in. So there are a lot of ways to present live bait, so I'm just going to touch on a couple of methods here. And the simplicity of these methods is what makes them so convenient. And you'll notice I'm not getting too technical in this video. I'm on vacation right now. But as it is the KNFS community here, you guys share wonderful tips down in the comments that other people do read. So do it on this video. Share your technical tips, and we'll appreciate that. So my favorite method is just a hook, my live bait, and a weighted split shot. And I prefer using the non-lead type on the split shots. I also prefer mosquito hooks or some type of circle hook. Octo hooks work really well. There are many hook types that will be effective, and I know some guys that just won't ever stray away from their long-shafted Aberdeen hooks, and that's great too. So with live bait, you can also get barbs on the shaft or bait keepers, and they're usually helpful to keeping that bait on the hook depending on how you hook your bait. And so again, what's important is that you're matching the hook size to the size and type of fish you want to catch. So that chart I made is free to view and printable, and then you're just matching your bait's presentation to that hook size. So trying to target a personal best bluegill with a size 12 hook is not a smart idea. Something bigger like a 4 or a 2 will target those larger bluegill. So I just like putting the split shot anywhere from 8 to 12 inches from my hook. The entire purpose of the split shot is just to add a bit of weight for casting, as well as to help sink the bait. If your hook and worm is heavy enough to get the casting distance you want, then you can just avoid using a split shot. Sometimes that split shot will confuse the fish, and they'll be hitting that split shot instead of the bait. And the method I like with this setup is usually just a nice cast and slow retrieval. Casting around cover or letting it sink in deeper spots often produces a fish. Also, finessing the bait into holes where fish are hiding under cover will work well. Line wise, y'all know me by now, I spool about 95% of my stuff with braided. I will use fluorocarbon leaders as well. I don't use mono anymore, but you can't really go wrong with any line type. I don't think common sunfishes are that picky to line visibility. Just keep in mind that some line types float more than others, so my braided line floats a lot, so I need more weight to get it down. And with that line weight, that test size, you really need to ask yourself, how much fun do I want to have? Or how much do I want to challenge myself? You could go try and get 4-pound red ear with 2-pound test mono on a light pole, and that would be a lot of fun because you'd actually have to use your drag. Or you could do what I do and use 10-pound braid on a light pole and still get a fun fight, but you know the line's not going to snap and you can just horse that fish in. Really, 2-pound line is something I don't like, even if it's mono, braided, or fluoro, because any snag is going to break that line. So I just recommend 4 to 6-pound test minimum for going for common sunfishes. Bobbers and floats are the add-on feature that I usually don't like using, but will use in a situation if it requires it. So I don't like using floats and bobbers too often for a few reasons, one of which being that I'm an active person. I have a hard time sitting still. I need to be moving a lot. So even though that doesn't match my style, a lot of people love that because they can sit down, pop open a beer, and they can just chill and watch their bobber. So secondly, I don't like bobbers because they add a delay in the hook set and or they will cause the fish to swallow the bait more easily, which is an absolute pain in the ass for catch and release fishing. However, I will use a bobber if there are fish sitting in an area that I know I just can't access without getting it with a float. An example of that is, say there's a weed mat. I'm here, I need to cast over that weed mat to get to a target depth. Normally, I like to do a drop shot, to get there. But sometimes that drop shot you can't reach. You want to be higher up. Floats are perfect for that. And also just make sure that you're using a bobber that is a good size, a float that's a good size. Too big of a float, you're not going to notice the hits. Too small of a float, your whole rig's just going to sink anyways. There's a perfect size to find that you will pick up with experience. So really, I'm not using this video to go into techniques too much, but to reinforce that this method, hook and worm, hook and leech, it's not just for rookies. This is a method that we veteran anglers love using too. So there it is. I fished for a long time and I love popping on a worm and a leech. I also like mixing up my methods, and like I said, for predatory fishes, live bait is going to be the best choice compared to artificial lures. Alright, there is one more in the series, and I will get it done. The question is just when. Fish responsibly, and good luck. I gotta go catch my muskie.